Coach, you know what? One of the things I find so interesting about where you guys are is I think we find out far more about football teams when the losses mount and the struggles are real. And what I see out of your football team right now is a lot of unity, a lot of camaraderie, a lot of team, a lot of guys talking about how important you are to their football careers. What does that say about your program, and what does that say about you?
Oh, I appreciate that. I do feel great about our guys and our culture here. Um, and you're right on. It's easy to have, leadership when everything's going well. It's really when things aren't going exactly the way you want, or you're not getting the tangible results. I mean, we play in a zero sum world, right? Where the winner gets the W and the loser obviously does not get the W. So there's no moral victories for us, but I do feel great about the direction of our program, how we're competing, the fact that our guys are improving. We're very young, we're very inexperienced, but these guys are battling, and not just on game day. They come ready to roll on Tuesday morning, and their preparation is beyond reproach. And you're right. That's why I'm so optimistic. Some other things, great university and a great coaching staff and all those things, but I do feel that we have a great resiliency. We've got great mental toughness, and it's important to these guys.
Well, let's not kid ourselves, Coach. I mean, you're the number two. Stanford is the second most difficult college in the country to get into. And I wonder about when we talk about culture and we talk about fit and camaraderie and all of that. I have to believe with your experience in knowing this conference the way you do, knowing the Northern California Bay Area the way that you do, you understood that before you came here. Is it daunting to be the football coach at Stanford when not every recruit is going to make it through your system?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely challenges, and look, at every university, will have challenges, and then they also have, advantages. And so for Stanford, it's very clear. We have a university that's recognized all over the world. It's a life-changing experience in terms of you're going to get a degree that's going to not only change you and your family, but generations to come. Really believe that. That being said, not everybody's going to meet the academic requirements that to get into Stanford. So we have to cast our net across the entire country. We have to go to all corners of the U.S. And I have found that when you find the right student athlete, they are drawn like a huge magnet to Stanford University. So I feel great about that. It's just on the short term, we are not a school that's going to live in the transfer portal. We're going to do it through high school recruits. We lost 17 players to the transfer portal, which I don't believe will happen again. They had graduated early because of the COVID. Everybody got an extra year, so they got their degree early. But we're going to live with the high school recruits. We're just not able to replace guys that leave early quickly through the transfer portal. We have to do it, through high school recruiting, which obviously is going to take a couple of years to put back-to-back classes together.
Well, the other interesting part of this, obviously, you're headed for the ACC now, and there's a couple of schools in that league that do okay in the classroom as well, obviously. So it would seem like, and I know I keep saying the word culture, but I know I've watched all these interviews where you've talked about the fit in the ACC, and you've talked about that. I mean, when you look at where you are now, though, one of the things that really strikes me is I am so disappointed that this Pac-12, this incarnation of the Pac-12 is going away. And again, I don't mean to keep going back to your resume, but this has been your footprint for your entire professional career, essentially. And I wonder your thoughts on where Stanford finds itself right now and where you guys are going forward. And what are your thoughts on in general on where the Pac-12 is headed?
I mean, like you, I was really disappointed and shocked. I never thought that it would come to this. I really didn't. It's such a proud conference in so many different ways that I always thought it would survive, and obviously it did not. And you're kind of stuck waiting and hoping that you find a seat to sit in, a kind of a musical chairs type of deal. And so for us, we have great leadership and direction. And we were able to land, and I think a conference, ACC, that is a perfect fit for us. It kind of mirrors our recruiting area on that coast, the East Coast. Obviously, we have a lot of kids from California and the West Coast, but there's a lot of our roster that comes from that area. And the recruits, we have an outstanding recruiting class that's committed, and they're ecstatic about being in the ACC because a lot of them are from that area. So their parents, their family, their friends are going to be able to drive and see 4 games per year, or a couple at least. And so I feel great about it. I think it's a great fit. And I'm excited about it. The ACC schedule just came out, some great teams and some great locations that we're excited. And there's a buzz around here about being in the ACC and our opportunities there.
How does that help you recruit? Because again, I think you're in a league now where you're surrounded by incredible universities, and I am one of the people who believes that this league, the Pac-12, does not get enough credit for the quality. I mean, heck, coach, you've seen both Washington and Oregon this year. I don't think we have to convince you this league is a good football league. But when you look at the ACC, how much have your conversations changed over the last several months when you're talking about, hey, this is where we're going? Has that been something that recruits have been warm to? Like, what has that been like for you?
Well, it's a great question. I think one is the Pac-12 is an incredible conference, and we've played most of the teams. We got a few more of the really good teams left, and it's outstanding. Great quarterback play, and it's I guess ironic that in its last year it might be its strongest it's been in really quite some time. In terms of our recruits, that week and a half, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks where we were kind of without a conference, I think our recruits were anxious and they want to know what's going on. And but as soon as we settled on being in the ACC, they were ecstatic about it. So they were excited to just recently get the ACC schedule and the reality of that. So it's turned out great. But there were a few weeks, honestly, where we were telling them, just hold on. We're Stanford University. We're going to end up in a good conference.
What are you going to say, right? What are you going to say? And I also wonder to that regard, obviously you're rebuilding Stanford,
Mm-hmm.
and I think David Shaw did some spectacular things there, but it's very clear that when you're going from the Pac-12 to the ACC, as good as the football is, your roster has some issues. You obviously have to ramp that up. We've heard so much about whether it's, Colorado or other programs that tend to churn their roster heavily. How much of that is happening or will happen, has happened for you? And what are the challenges of those academic standards we talked about when you're trying to ramp up a roster to compete in a league like the ACC?
Yeah, it's going to be totally different than other universities. We are not going to live in the transfer portal. We are not going to be able to flip our roster quickly. It's just not going to happen. But I do think we will have a mentality, and our program will look at more long-term growth and sustainability. So I really feel like if you're smart enough to come to Stanford University, you're smart enough to stay here and get your degree. So I feel like we are going to be able to bring in great high school players. They're outstanding student athletes, and then develop them over, a 4 or 5 year period, where these schools that are able to flip their roster quickly, they are also going to have to do it, more often. And so we're not going to really have to deal with that. Now, these first couple of years after, losing a number of guys in the transition, all that, it's going to be more challenging, which we knew coming in. But on the long term, I feel like Stanford, we're going to be the outlier. We're going to have a lot of same guys on our roster for 4 to 5 years. That's going to build continuity. They're going to be able to develop, and it's going to help our culture because you're going to be around the same guys for 4 to 5 years. And some of these universities are going to have new teammates that they didn't even know, and half of their team is brand new. We are never going to have that. I think although there are benefits to having kind of quick returns on flipping your roster, I think the sustainability in that, I really prefer the direction we're going to go in.
Troy, one of the things I find so interesting about you, again, is your background. Played at Cal, coached at Sac State, amongst other places. And I wonder, you talk about relationships and you talk about continuity. How important is Cal to Stanford? And how important was that relationship, the Calford relationship, if you will? You're going to the ACC together. I'm a huge believer, Coach, that rivalries are significantly important to college football. And I wonder your thoughts on that relationship between Stanford and Cal.
Well, I was very proud that there was a great tie-in in regards to we were going to be together at all costs, and I think you're absolutely right that college football is about rivalries, and that's the thing that scares me a little bit about it's becoming kind of an NFL model a little bit. We don't want to lose that. We don't want to lose those great rivalries, and our rivalries are a little bit different than some of the others. There's some very unhealthy rivalries out there in college football. They kind of make it fun for the fans, but it can be a little toxic at times.
Come on, you can say it. You coached at Utah. Say it. I want you to say it. You're like, it's funny you bring this up because we talked about it yesterday. Does BYU and Utah, do they need to play every year?
I think it's a great rivalry. I really do. There's a definite dislike of the universities, and they're two great programs and two great football teams and universities and all those things. And it's really fun for the fans. I think it does create a lot of anxiety and tension and other ways though, game day and off season, but unbelievable rivalries. I would love to see them play every year, but who am I? So, but the Cal Stanford one's a little bit friendlier. We have light jabs at each other, but there's a lot of respect and admiration, and hopefully we play each other for forever.
You have an interesting bit to ride the season out here. I mean, you've got Washington State this week, Oregon State, you've got Cal coming up, you've got Notre Dame coming up. Like where you guys are right now, I mean, how important is it that are your goals to continue development, obviously, but talk to me about what's important to you over the next, month, 6 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I've never talked about wins. I mean, we want to win. I want to win every game, but just talking about winning and having goals of winning isn't going to make it happen. So it's the process that we really focus on. So I want to see our guys continue to compete in their preparation all the way through the end of the season. And then I want to see continued development in terms of our guys are getting better, understanding the system, becoming a little bit smarter football wise, the football IQ improving. And so far I've seen that happen. But we got some really good opponents coming up. Those teams are all really good, and it's going to be a challenge to continue to improve, but our guys are really willing.
Yeah, and before I let you go, I do want to ask you about this situation at Michigan. I think I've heard your answer on this several times, and I think it's very interesting when you talk about competitive advantages. The first question I would ask you about sign stealing, how much of an advantage is it for your offense or your defense to in a hypothetical world know every play and know exactly what the opposite number is going to do in that situation?
It's massive. As I mean, this level of college football in the NFL is so competitive. There's so much pressure to win and be successful. It's you can't kid yourself. Knowing the protection, knowing the defensive calls is a massive, massive advantage. And I think when you don't do anything about it, what you're doing is you're rewarding people that cheat. And that's what we're trying to avoid. Most people don't cheat. They play it honestly. So I am all up for improving the technology and trying to eliminate that aspect, because the great majority of college football programs don't cheat, and we don't want to reward people that do.
Troy, do you, and I'm not saying that you're being dishonest with me, do you truly buy that? Do you buy that most football programs, most coaches are above board? Because I've heard so many times, and I'm sure you have as well, oh, everybody does it. Everybody does it. I don't buy that everybody does it. I've been around Kyle Whittingham, Kalani Sitake. I've been around Pete Carroll. I've been around the biggest coaches in the game. And I don't believe that the coaches at the top of the college football world, well, he's winning, so of course he's cheating. Do you truly believe that?
And you're talking in respect to sign stealing and things like that.
Yeah, in general, because I think we get into these conversations, and of course we just check a box that says, well, if it's not sign stealing, it's something else.
Right.
And sign stealing on its own is not odd. It's not illegal.
That's
but
right.
When we talk about ethics and cheating, do you believe that most of your peers are honest and above board in running their programs?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different things. One, in terms of, you're right, it's not illegal to steal signals. Now, to videotape and do that stuff, that is definitely illegal. I've never, you've heard rumors about certain programs doing it, but I can't confirm. I've never been around anybody that's done it. Utah was always above board, and I was at Eastern Washington, and just never done any of that stuff. Now, if you can look over and see a signal and you think you know it, I mean, I've never been able to benefit from that personally, but I guess there's been people that have done it. In terms of recruiting, there's no doubt that people cheat in recruiting. Now, a lot of that is changing because of the NIL. Most of the stuff that was illegal now is becoming legal. So, people are always going to, kind of push the limits of what's legal, what's not legal. What we all want is just, equity, to have a chance to be competitive and be rewarded for doing things the right way. And I do think you're right. Collectively, I'd say the majority of people are following the rules. And we just got to make sure that we understand that not everybody will follow the rules, and to think that they will, that would be naive.
And the last thing I'll ask you is, how big of a deal is it if we believe that, Jim Harbaugh in Michigan or any program did what Jim Harbaugh and Michigan are accused of? Is this a massive ethical breach? Is that, like, how big of a deal? How much of a problem is that?
Yeah, and I'll just speak, because I do not know the details of the Michigan deal, so I'll just speak hypothetically that I think if you're videotaping signals and utilizing that, to give yourself an advantage, I think it's a massive deal.
Yeah, that's huge. Coach, appreciate your time. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your season.
Great, thank you.